Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. We're going to start out tonight with a brief mention of Kim Fowley, who died recently at the age of 75. He was a fixture on the LA rock scene and in the European rock scene. Sort of a weird dude, but a lot of people liked him. He was the manager in the 1970s of the all-girl group The Runaways. That was the group that gave Joan Jett her start as a teenager. Lita Ford was also in that group as a teenager, and she went on to sue Kim Fowley for breach of contract later on. But to me, he's best known for a song he produced for his friend Gary Paxton. It became a #1 hit in 1960. Fowley got Paxton and a bunch of his friends into the studio to record a song that was written by Doug Frazier about a popular comic strip from the 30s and 40s. It's called Alley Oop, and I may have played it as a closer before, and I also might have mentioned it was the first song played here in Chicago by WLS in 1960 when it changed its format to rock music.
The cats don't bug him 'cause they know better, 'cause he's a mean motor scooter and a bad go-getter. He's the toughest man there is alive. Wears clothes from a wildcat's hide. He's the king of the jungle jive. Look at that caveman go.
Yeah, Kim Fowley was all over the place. He wrote and produced for the Byrds, Frank Zappa and the Mothers, Warren Zevon, and he was one of the first guys to pick up on the Rolling Stones before they came to the United States. As I said, he died at the age of 75, although about 20 years ago he claimed he was 125 and had been dead for 13 years. That's the LA rock scene for you. We're going to change gears here and move to an innovator, Tony Verna, who died recently at the age of 81. He was the man who changed the way people watch sports. In 1963, during the Army-Navy game, he invented instant replay, and watching a game would never be the same again. Here's a report on Tony Verna and instant replay.
On December 7th, 1963, I aired the first instant replay.
In the early 1960s, college and pro football telecasts were devoid of the viewing enhancements we now take for granted. And since instant replay had yet to be invented, viewers could see what happened on a play, but they couldn't see why it happened.
So I'd say to cameraman like Joe Sidlaw, I said, Joe, what happened to that receiver? He says, oh, he tripped at the line. He was checked or something. And I said, wouldn't it be great if I could see what happened? But it didn't matter later. It had to be instant, right after the play.
Executing the first instant replay was a logistical nightmare, beginning with the size of the videotape machine needed.
They were the size of 2 Frigidaires. And it came with a tape that had I Love Lucy on it. And so if the tape didn't record properly, you would get Lucy on the air. I mean, you had to be careful, because this was 4 years before there was a Super Bowl. This was the biggest game. And if you fool with the Army-Navy game and messed that up, that was the end of your career.
Verna had hoped Navy quarterback Roger Staubach would be featured with the first instant replay. Instead, the unlikely hero became Army quarterback Rollie Stichweh. It was broadcaster Lindsey Nelson's duty to sound the warning sirens.
And I say, this is it, Lindsey, go. And Lindsey looks at the monitor and says, ladies and gentlemen, Army has not scored again. Now, if you said that today, they'd throw a net on you and take you out of the booth and put you in a booby hatch.
The tape from that 1963 game never survived, but instant replay did. In fact, it thrived. And by the 1967 NFL Championship, instant replay had invaded the locker room.
Coach, we're going to have a play right now. You can see on this monitor. I hope I can see it. Slow motion now as Jerry Kramer makes a key block for Bart Starr on this quarterback sneak for the winning touchdown. Yes. You will see Jerry Kramer blows him out of there. Yeah, that's a fine block.
Today, when you watch a game, you couldn't think of watching without the instant replay. It goes hand in hand.
Big surprise, Tony Verna never made any money on instant replay. And not only that, but he earned the enmity of Pete Rozelle in the NFL, and here he talks about it.
I don't think I was ever forgiven by Pete Rozelle and the football NFL for not first using it on the NFL. They never liked it. Goes back to the first instant replay was a college game. If I had to do it again, I probably would do it on the NFL game because it cost me a lot of grief. Roger Staubach was called Roger the Dodger in those days. He was the Annapolis quarterback. The play I showed was from Rollie Stichweh, who was the Army quarterback, an unknown. I had hoped that Staubach would do one of his scrambles and I could show it, with some cause and effect to it. But every time one of his plays came up, thing didn't work. Well, it changed how you view a game because you want to see what happened. You want to put it in context with the game because your replays now are not from the same angle. Even the first one wasn't the same angle. It was a tighter lens. Replays today are a lot of isolated cameras. They call ISO. In baseball, they isolate. If you're a right-handed hitter, they isolate the shortstop and third baseman because chances are it's going to be that way. There's all kinds of patterns. In the Kentucky Derby these days, they don't have one camera trying to figure out the winner. They've got 10 ISO cameras or something, you know what I mean? But that's all okay. I mean, anything that makes it easier for the viewer, that's what it's all about.
We're going to move on now to Melvin Gordon, who died recently at the age of 95, and he was the chief executive officer in charge of one of America's most popular candies, Tootsie Roll. He married into the company, and here he and his wife talk about their history with Tootsie Roll.
Tootsie Roll has been a great part of my life since 1952 when I joined the Tootsie Roll Board of Directors. And in 1962 I became chairman of the board of Tootsie Roll and chief executive officer. So Tootsie Roll has been a part of my life till now and a great part of my life.
It all began in 1896 when an Austrian immigrant brought what was a secret formula to the United States. And he set up a small candy shop and began to manufacture the first wrapped penny candy. When I was a child, my father was president of Tootsie Roll, so he came home every night and told us stories about what went on at work. And when I was a child, I went through the Tootsie Roll plant, so I knew something about its process. And as time went on and I went to school, I began to work here. It's really timeless, from generation to generation. The formula for the product is exactly the same as when the Austrian immigrant first brought it over from Austria. However, the method of manufacturing has changed. While it was a handmade and hand-rolled piece, today it is a very highly automated process.
Tootsie Roll was the original 1-cent candy that was wrapped, the first one to be wrapped. When people picked candy out of a Cracker Barrel, Tootsie Roll was a special thing because it was sanitary. It tasted chocolatey, and it couldn't be harmed by the weather. It wouldn't get too hot or too cold. Tootsie Roll became a part of Americana because it was chocolatey, and yet it was less expensive. People could buy it for a penny.
As a tribute to Mr. Gordon, I'm going to play a Tootsie Roll story from the Korean War and the Chosin Reservoir.
It's December 1950, and the 1st Marine Division finds itself surrounded by 10 Chinese divisions. They're in a fight for their lives. One of the Marines was on the radio back to the rear, and on the radio, he was trying to request more 60mm mortars. The code name for 60mm mortars on the radio was Tootsie Rolls. The only problem was the guy in the rear didn't know that code. So as this Marine was frantically trying to call for more Tootsie Rolls, he took them literally.
So guess what? The next morning they airdropped crates of Tootsie Rolls into the Marines. No mortar ammunition, but they had plenty of Tootsie Rolls. But the Tootsie Rolls were kind of a blessing in disguise, because remember, the average temperature at the breakout from the Chosin Reservoir was from 20 to 50 below zero. Everything was freezing. They couldn't keep water because water froze immediately.
They could take one of these Tootsie Rolls out, and even though it was frozen solid, and they realized that after about 20 minutes that Tootsie Roll was soft enough that they could chew it. And those Tootsie Rolls gave them the sugar and the energy they needed to keep moving and to keep fighting. There were literally hundreds of these Tootsie Roll wrappers lining the roads out of the Chosin Reservoir.
When the Chosin Few has their reunions, the Tootsie Roll Company always sends boxes of Tootsie Rolls.
We're going to close tonight with Ervin Drake, who died recently at the age of 95. Nice Jewish boy from New York City. He was a songwriter. He wrote this song for the Andrews Sisters.
Oh, tico, tico, tick, oh, tico, tico, tock, this tico, tico, he's a cuckoo in my clock. And when he says cuckoo, he means it's time to woo. It's tico time for all the lovers in the block. I've got a heavy date, a tate at 8. So speako, tico, tell me, is it getting late? If I'm on time, cuckoo, but if I'm late, woo-woo, the one my heart is going to may not want to wait.
He wrote this signature song for Billie Holiday.
Good morning, honey, you old gloomy sight. Good morning, honey, thought we said goodbye last night. I turned and tossed until it seemed you had gone. But here you are with the dawn.
He wrote this song for Frankie Lane. I really don't like this song, but it was the first hit song ever introduced on television.
I believe for every drop of rain that falls, a flower grows. I believe that somewhere in the darkest night, a candle glow. I believe for everyone who goes astray, someone will come to show the way.
Yeah, and he wrote the words for this one. Here's Duke Ellington introducing a young Sarah Vaughan.
He introduces this time a young lady whose career has been a fabulous one. One who's known throughout the world affectionately by the profession as Little Miss Sassy. And here she is, Sarah Vaughan.
I look for my heart, it's Benito. I lost it way down in Torito while chancing a dance fiesta. Benito, since then has my heart been Benito. I know I must go to Torito, that yearning to lose Benito.
But Ervin Drake's most famous song was one he wrote for the Kingston Trio in the early 1960s. It wasn't even a hit. They threw it on the back of one of their albums.
When I was 17, it was a very good year. It was a very good year for small town girls and soft summer nights. We'd hide from the light on the village green when I was 17.
Chairman of the board is riding back from Los Angeles to Palm Springs one day. He heard it on the radio, and I'll let Ervin Drake tell the story.
Sinatra told me one day, because I had no idea, I had not met him earlier, and he said that he lived in Rancho Mirage, and he was driving on his way from L.A., where he had some business, and he said that on the way he had the radio on because he was making an LP. So he wanted ideas, and he kept the radio on, and he heard the Kingston Trio doing a song called It Was a Very Good Year. And he thought, gee, that'd be great for my 50 years and comeback album. And so he immediately got on his next gas station, and he called Gordon Jenkins. Told Gordy he wanted to record a song written by Ervin Drake called It Was a Very Good Year. And he would like to have in the orchestration, because Frank, as I found out later, always had a lot to say about orchestration. He wanted to have lots of strings, also reeds, and maybe something, a lead instrument, an offbeat thing like the oboe. And everybody paid attention to him when he said it, because they knew that although he had no schooling, that his instinct was right on the mark. So he recorded the song. I said to Gordy, I'd like you to make it real schmaltzy. When he recorded it, I had no idea. And I was over in London, and I called the publisher over there who represents me, and he said, hey, have you heard of Sinatra's new recording? I said, you mean if I believe it, he record? No. What then? He said, it was a very good year. I said, you mean you have it here? Yeah. I haven't heard it yet. So he said, well, I'll play it for you over the phone. It was really marvelous, because Sinatra was a born actor, and everything came across. The reading of lyrics. Somebody once asked me, I think it was William B. Williams, when he was on WNEW, he said, it's Sinatra's birthday today. Anything you care to say? I said, yes. Were Laurence Olivier to have singing pipes in addition, he might aspire to be Frank Sinatra.
So that's how we got the song for Sinatra's 50th birthday album, one of the most famous and greatest songs of the 20th century.
And now I think of my life as vintage wine from fine old kegs, from the brim to the dregs, it poured sweet and clear. It was a very good year.
Great arrangement by Gordon Jenkins, none better. Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius Sid Tepps, and I probably should have closed with Sinatra's version, but I thought I'd close with the greatest parody version of It Was a Very Good Year by Homer Simpson, who was looking back over his life and sang, It was a very good beer.
Well, beer, you had some great times. When I was 17, I drank some very good beer. I drank some very good beer I purchased with a fake ID. My name was Brian McGee. I stayed up listening to Queen when I was 17.